Welcome to this edition of At the Mic. I'm your host, Keith Malinak. Now available on YouTube when you head to youtube.com/atthemicwithkeith. That's youtube.com/atthemicwithkeith. This week I sit down with my friend Libby. That conversation is next. But first, I want to talk to you about a hero of the American Revolution, a man whose words inspired a nation to act. And when the going got tough, his words inspired a nation to continue the fight for freedom. I'm talking about Thomas Paine, and a new blend from American Pride Roasters Coffee honors that hero. The Thomas Paine blend features 50% smooth and elegant Guatemalan beans and 50% raw, strong Vietnamese Robusta beans, which are double the caffeine of Arabica beans. This stuff is going to wake you up the way Paine woke up colonial America. Head over to aprcoffee.com and try the new Thomas Paine blend today. There's so much to try over there, and it's all 10% off when you apply promo code ATM at checkout. That's aprcoffee.com.
You're listening to At the Mic with Keith, an independent podcast production.
Libby may sound like a made-up name, but it is 100% real, and so is she. She and I sat down on her recent visit to Dallas to learn about her life story. And that conversation starts right now on At the Mic. Now, this is your real name.
Yes.
Libby.
Yes, that is.
It sounds like a
name.
Twitter handle that you would have created out of thin air, but no, that's not the case.
Yeah, if I was a liberal, it would be a pretty great persona.
But you're not a liberal?
I am not a liberal.
Okay, all right, cool. You're right, that would have been too convenient if you were liberal, being that you're Libby on Twitter and in real life.
Whenever I say something that the conservatives don't completely love, because of course people like to hear their own opinion coming out of your mouth with no variation. And so if I say something even a little bit off of what they want to hear, it's Abby liberal. Oh, Abby liberal.
Oh no, does that happen?
A lot.
Oh no. Yeah, isn't Twitter a fun place? It's pretty fun, right?
It's so great.
It's so great. All right, so you were born in Maine. Not many people can point to Maine as their home state, so kudos to you.
Yeah, I planned it really well, so I'd be able to have that brag.
How old were you when you moved out of there?
I moved at 18. I came to Virginia for college.
So your entire childhood was spent in the state of Maine?
No, 3 of those years, not concurrently, were in Western Africa.
Wow, I didn't realize you were there that long. Okay, so you were in the Ivory Coast, right?
Yes, the Ivory Coast.
So what took you from Maine to Africa?
So my parents were missionaries with a company called New Tribes Mission, which is under a different name now, and I don't really know what name that is now, but a mission focused on learning the language and giving people scripture in their, what they call heart language. So rather than, because a lot of these countries have a primary language, like Ivory Coast, it was a French colony, so its national language is French.
Wow.
But there's about 60 language groups in the nation, and the mission of New Tribes Mission was to give everybody, all 60 of those language groups, the Bible in the language that their heart speaks and that that they think in.
So what language did your parents speak over there?
So our function was running the missionary school for the missionaries that were in the tribes, so that they could focus in the tribes and run international school for their kids. So they were just focused in French and teaching. My dad taught science and my mom taught English.
What was your age when you were over there?
I was 5 when we first went over in 2000, and 7 for the first evacuation when the country heated up, and then 9 when we went back. And 9, that one was a shorter period of time before it blew up again.
Wow. So that must have been quite an experience, because you probably remember quite a bit from that time, huh?
Yeah, I have some pretty vivid memories. It's what you would expect from a third world country. Very, very poor, very dry, dusty, winds coming down off the Sahara, agrarian subsistence living.
Would you ever want to go back there?
Missions is not my calling, but I would like to go back someday, see it again.
And I guess I hear this from a lot of people who end up going to third world countries, go to Africa.
you have a sense of, and maybe you were too young, or maybe not, to kind of get this kind of vibe, but people always appreciate this country, the United States, more after they have been overseas for any amount of time, really.
I was there too long at too formative of an age. That was my normal. So rather, it's been now looking back, I can say I'm so thankful I got to grow up here with all the opportunities rather than, the initial plan was to have been there my entire childhood and
Really?
possibly, because that was the, career missionaries is what my parents were planning on. So that would have meant I would have been there at least until college. If not choosing to stay past that point. A lot of kids do just choose to fold right into the ministry, or they come back to the States and have their college. So that was the plan. So for me, when we lost that, I lost my home. I lost my life. So it took a long time before I appreciated the opportunity of the place I ended up living.
So do you wish that you had been able to stay there until you were an adult?
For a long time, I wish that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Looking back, are you glad that it worked out the way it did back in the States?
Now I can say it worked out the way it was supposed to, and I probably wouldn't have had the opportunities I have.
Yeah. Do you think you might ever go back?
If I had a reason to.
Right. So you mentioned that wasn't your calling. Is there anything in particular that you think is your calling, or that you've pursued?
I currently work for a military support organization that helps combat wounded veterans and their families, and partially because of my experiences in Africa with war, having a unique sort of experience that helps in that. So is that my calling forever? I don't know, but it's certainly something I'm called to right now.
And what group is that you work for?
It's called Freedom Alliance. It was founded by Colonel Oliver North after his experiences with Vietnam, and he said, I don't want veterans to ever be treated this way again. We're going to start an organization to make sure people from Desert Storm, 9/11 onward are treated better.
That's good. That's good. So you're visiting Texas right now. You're visiting family. You've been eating some of the Texas food. By the way, you brought in some local donuts I've not been familiar with. I've not heard of this company. And what is it? It's
Mochi Nut?
Yeah, I didn't realize that there were bacon, literally there's a donut inside that box. It's covered in little bacon bits. And I'm looking forward to enjoying that. So thanks for bringing that, because that's the one thing when you visit the Blaze, if you bring food, like the gift of food, my gosh, you're practically in our will at this point. So thanks for bringing those. So what have you experienced as far as local Texas food offerings here?
I had some Tex-Mex last night, lots of tacos and queso and frozen custard. I don't know if that's a Texas thing or not.
No, I know it's good, but no, you have, because I never thought of chicken and waffles, okay, as a breakfast thing. But is that what you had for breakfast this morning?
I had chicken and waffles and steak and eggs, and there was a lot of sharing going back and forth at my table.
Yeah. Okay. Well, chicken and waffles. I've had that as just like a dinner meal. It never occurred to me, never mind the waffle aspect, that it was also totally suitable for breakfast. It's probably suitable at any time of day, really.
I agree.
So have you had barbecue while you've been here?
You would think I would have, but I have not had barbecue.
That'll be your next meal. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have a younger sister, and was she over there, obviously, with y'all in the Ivory Coast?
Yeah, my sister Liz is 2 years younger, and she was there with the whole family.
And is she gonna go back, do you think?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. I love your earliest memory here. You lost a coat at an airport when you were 3 years old?
Yeah.
Oh no! What did you do?
I think it just was on the back of my chair. We were eating. I have a memory of eating at this table in my pink coat. It was a pretty new coat too, on the back of my chair. And then I think they called for the plane, and my parents were, juggling two very small children.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until we got home that they were, coat's gone.
Oh no! Okay. Now on this trip, you've been going through airports. You haven't lost a coat or misplaced any articles of clothing, right?
No, but I did slice my knuckle open trying to get a Sprite open on...
Oh, hello, Keith. How are you? That's literally what I do, stuff like that. Okay, well, I'm glad to see you. Oh, you got a Band-Aid all over there? That's literally from opening was a can?
It was one of those glass balls of Sprite, and I didn't have a bottle opener, so I found the most banged up looking handle in my hotel room, and I was going like that on the side trying to get I sliced it.
That literally sounds like something I do on a regular basis. All right, so you went to Patrick Henry College in Virginia.
I did.
Studied literature. Mm-hmm. What had you planned on doing with a literature degree?
My original plan when I went to school was to go for journalism. And so I started off in the journalism program right out of the gate. And about a year in, I realized that at least the journalism industry, as it was described to me by my professor, was not something I wanted to be involved in. I wanted to be able to be conservative and not have to hide who I was or, bury what my values were. I took a different direction, and I took a little bit more journalism classes, radio, audio classes, writing thing.
Did your professors tell you that radio doesn't pay?
I think that was mentioned.
Well, at least you had honest professors.
Yeah. I dropped out of school at that 2-year mark after I finished my sophomore year, and got into the workforce, waited tables for 6 months or so before I got a job at a church. And then I was able to use almost all of those classes that I had taken, the journalism writing classes and the audio editing just a little bit. And it was just enough. Just enough, huh? To be useful to them.
Cool. All right, so let's go through some of the jobs that you wanted to hold from a young age. Because you're still young. You could probably pull off any of these. Do you still have an inkling to be a doctor?
No, I realized around 9 that I couldn't handle the blood.
Right. That's a big part of being a doctor. How about a lawyer? You ever want to be an attorney?
Occasionally, like watching the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, I think, I could go to law school right now and still make it.
Right. Let's see. Actress, is that still something you'd want to do?
I do community theater, so I do kind of scratch that itch a little bit.
Yeah, all right. Scientist, that's kind of a broad term. You want to be a scientist?
That was still that was when I gave up doctor, and I still thought I want to do something sciencey, but for the same reason I didn't go into journalism. I didn't want to be in a position where I had to lie about my values or pretend I didn't think a certain way.
Now, if you are good at acting, that would be a skill that would come in handy if you still want to be a politician. So, I mean, are you still thinking maybe one day you might run for office? 'Cause you can do that at any age.
Absolutely. If the opportunity arose,
cool.
I could definitely see myself doing that.
Is there any particular political office that you would be interested in? Like, we would be local, or you want to be national, or anything in between?
I think I would start local and just go up as far as I could go.
But see, the name, though. The name might be an issue.
It might.
Because how are you going to sell yourself, Abby Libby? People are going to have a tough time believing that's your name. Or that the politics don't match up.
In professional circles, I go with Abigail Libby, which doesn't make it a whole lot better, but I do often get mistaken for the Libby of canned vegetable variety, which I am not.
Oh, right.
I could probably get away with that.
I forgot about that, yeah. Okay, so you list your husband, John, as the person who has had the biggest impact on you. Where did you guys meet?
We met through mutual friends at a 4th of July party. So John is 4.5 years younger than me, which means that he was just getting out of high school when I first met him, I was right in college. So my initial impression was, why is this kid showing up to, this...
He's got moxie.
Older kids, and he was there with his brother, and I was like, okay, well, he's just... And his family set off all these fireworks. So I was like, fine, he can be here if he's going to set off the fireworks. It's not like I was the arbiter of that party, but I didn't pay that much attention to him for a couple years.
Oh, boy.
He, over the next 2 years, he got more involved with the friend group. And I found out that he went up every year to a town in northern Maine, very, very poor town in northern Maine, right next to where I used to spend my summers. And he had this connection with this town where he'd go up with a group and fix roofs and paint and just kind of do service work up there. So we just started talking and forming a little bit more of a connection through that shared experience. And he was really fascinated with my experience in Africa. And so conversations about missions work and the difference between long-term and short-term missions work kind of came up. And I thought, okay, well, he's the decent kid.
guy.
It's fun to talk to. So I figured he can.
So you robbed the cradle.
I did. It took about a month from when he confessed to having feelings. I was very, very angry because I thought you had to just go and ruin this perfectly good friendship. I was really, really not happy with him.
Oh, no.
But
poor John.
I know. And he just stuck by. I said, I don't, you're too young. We're not on the same page. I enjoy you as a friend. And he said, that's fine. I don't need anything from you. I just want you to know. I just want you to be aware.
Look at that.
And he just
guy.
stuck by. And I remember the moment I started to change my mind was we had both pulled up we were going to go swimming with a group of friends in the Shenandoah River. And I pulled up and then he pulled up and he pulled something out of his car. And I was like, what are you doing? And he said, your tire is flat. I'm going to fill it up. And he was already fixing the problem before I knew I had a problem.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, wow, that's really attractive.
Wait a minute. Let me re-examine this John guy.
So a couple weeks later, I said, okay, fine. We had talked so much, and I had thrown at him every reason why we shouldn't be together. Mm-hmm. And they had just kind of all fallen apart. So by the time I agreed to date him, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that we were going to get married. Because all of those things,
yeah.
I mean, I threw everything at him of any possible objections. So it was 9 months later that we went ahead and got married.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So you guys have been married for 3 years now. And you live in Virginia. Is that right?
Technically, West Virginia. We bought a house in October just across the border because it's so much cheaper.
Sure. You got to do that. Absolutely. Okay, well, you guys obviously live in a beautiful part of the country. Then that's a lovely corner that not a lot of people really get to. So it's probably one of the last few places in the country that is still kind of kept a secret. So let's see here. You got a couple cats, right?
I do have a couple cats.
You're a cat person?
John is, and I didn't think that I was because I had a cat when I was younger that just ignored me. It just had its life, and I didn't know that cats could be lovely and cuddly and cute. But John's a firefighter, so people just give him kittens for no reason.
Does he rescue them from trees and bring them home?
That's what I like to tell people. But no, people just say, I have kittens. You want a kitten? So we have two that are about 6 months apart in age, but they're still both pretty young. And he is really good at training them to be really cuddly and nice.
Nice. Yeah. I used to have a cat that played fetch, so I know what you mean. Like there are some cats that can actually act like dogs.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, our younger one plays fetch.
So you list Twitter as a hobby. Now, reading is a hobby. Is there anything in particular you're currently reading?
I like a good spread of genres. I really like fantasy novels, stuff like Brandon Sanderson, J.R.R. Tolkien, things like that. But I also enjoy nonfiction, conservative idea stuff.
Always have a book with you, right?
Yeah, I like broadening the mind.
But you also list under hobbies, quote, having experiences. So what does that mean, having experiences?
Well, this would be an example of me flying down to Dallas to eat tacos and record a podcast. Just something, having an experience, having a life experience.
I gotcha. Okay. Very good. Well, I mean, is this everything you thought it would be?
Yes.
Sitting in this studio and recording this podcast today?
I wasn't expecting the pig, but mostly up to expectation.
You got Jeffy Jr. over there, the little pig mascot. We also have hanging up behind you is a rubber chicken.
Oh, I love that.
We've got Nancy Pelosi wearing a mask and rooting on the Canadian truckers from several months ago. She's in here. We've got guitars and all sorts of stuff. Oh, you know what? I'm going to start giving people that come in here, I'm going to start giving them a parting gift. Hang on.
Ooh.
Everybody, because somebody sent us these candy cigarettes. And I don't smoke. No. And so that we just have so many of them. So here you go. There's your souvenir for coming all the way to the Blaze. Abby Libby, a box of candy cigarettes.
I feel very
I don't
honored.
think they're going to let you have those, though, at the airport. So you might have to pack them in your bag.
I'll hide them deep in my bag.
Okay. You listen to country music.
I do.
All right. So who's your favorite? You can only pick one.
Probably George Strait.
Okay.
Kind of walking that line between the old and the new.
See, I don't know a lot about country music, but I do know that George Strait is kind of a foot in both classic or more modern. I know something about country music, y'all. If you could only keep 5 possessions, you got your passport,
yes,
your gun,
yeah,
whatever book you're currently reading. I think that's fun. Your phone and a cast iron skillet. Now, I know. Every time I do this podcast, I get to this question and I go, "Oh, I got to change that. Is it deserted island? Is it sentimental? But anyhow, let's just say you've only got these 5 possessions. That cast iron skillet is not going to come in handy without something to cook on."
That's true. I think I just kind of
assumed there would be
food where I was going.
Okay, let's see. Now, listing your passport. Do you get a lot of use out of that? Do you get to travel the world and see a bunch of countries, or is that just something you'd like to have or have handy in case you were down to 5 possessions?
I wish I was able to travel more than I am, but when I get an opportunity, it's often pretty quick. So having the passport up to date at all times means that I don't have to say no to a really cool opportunity. For example, I got to go down to Costa Rica just a month ago. If I hadn't had my passport up to date, that turnaround would not have worked out.
Somebody recently told me that, and I have no idea if this is accurate or not, but somebody recently told me that Costa Rica was, quote, a libertarian paradise, end quote. I have not done any research. I saw that and I thought, wow, I would not think that. Was that your experience? I don't know how long you said a week you were down there?
Costa Rica is a very interesting country. Their motto is Pura Vida, which means pure life. So that kind of ethos of libertarianism, it was described to me as if you pay someone double their day's wages, they just won't come to work the next day because they're just living right on the edge of just what do I need for today? What do I need to eat today? What do I need to clothe today? And they're not really thinking, they're not planning for the future. That's just the culture. It's got a dark side. There's an incredible amount of prostitution, drugs, and it's a place where...
So a libertarian paradise, like I said.
Truly. There's a lot of very, very rich people from the States and other places that are in some areas. There's a lot of really good sport fishing, which is what they come for primarily. And they really feed that aspect of the prostitution in particular.
Oh, boy.
So there were places it wasn't good for me to go, and there were places it was good for me to go in Costa Rica.
Okay. What part of Costa Rica were you in?
I couldn't point to it on a map, but it's the Los Sueños. It's almost like a sub-town. It's a resort area.
Is it on the coast then? Or?
Yeah, it would have been. It's on the coast. A lot of harbor for boats.
I got you.
The other interesting thing is that they don't have their own military. The United States military has a big base down there and basically has a deal with them to keep them safe, and they just don't fund any type of military.
That is interesting. Wow. Very interesting. Well, you got to have a lot of faith in another country's government to have them protect you like that.
Indeed.
My goodness. So, staying internationally here, you list the most scared that you've ever been back when you were in Africa as a child, and some events that were happening there. What happened that caused you guys, I guess, to leave? Was it, something pretty bad with the government there?
So a lot of those nations, when the countries that colonized them moved out, what was left behind was a vacuum and lines drawn around tribes that didn't necessarily get along.
And this is probably why when you look at a map of Africa, the borders are so ridiculous looking.
They're silly.
So that's what it is, huh? To try to separate tribes into different countries?
That's part of it. And then they tried to institute democracy in most of these nations. And democracy works when you have kind of that foundational ideological understanding of freedom and all these things that came kind of through Christendom and Greek and Roman thought. And that background just isn't there in Africa, just like it's not there in the Middle East. And so it's like trying to build a house with no foundation. Even though we know the house is really good, we discount how deep our foundation goes in the United States when we try to put democracy on these other countries. So what happened was a lot of those countries are pretty unstable. And we knew an election was coming and we thought it would probably be okay. But a lot of people weren't happy with the results of that election. So things were brewing for a long time that we weren't particularly aware of. And in 2002, when we'd been there about 2.5 years, overnight, a rebel group came in, led by one of the generals who didn't think that the president should be president, and tried to take over the entire country. They succeeded in taking half. So overnight, we woke up and a town a few miles north was where the line was going through Bouake, halfway down the country, and we knew that they were trying to push in further. So the UN, French troops from the UN got involved because France understands that when they left the country after they colonized it, they still take some responsibility for the unrest that remains and the instability that remains. So they took over our school compound, our mission school compound, and evacuated people, not Ivorian people, but expatriates from other countries who were at other international schools. Some of them were missions work, some of them were humanitarian. Evacuated them down to our school. And meanwhile, the battle lines just kept getting closer and closer. So when they were about a mile out of our town, our mission called it. So they evacuated us all down to Abidjan on the coast. And it's just one of those things where you take a bag and you put as much as you can in it, and that's what you get to take of your life. And we sat in Abidjan hoping that things would get better. We sat there for a couple weeks at a college campus. I was 7 at this point. And my dad and a bunch of the men from the mission went back to Yamoussoukro into kind of the thick of it to get more of our items, more of our supplies, a couple more bags. And then they put us on planes and took us home.
Wow. Did your parents ever allude to this, whether at the time or after the fact? Did they ever talk to you about how concerned they were, how scared they were? Like, did you guys ever fear for your life?
Yes, and more so the second time.
So you went back. I can't imagine going back to a place where I was, under so much threat, but that's just me.
It was one of those things where when God has called you somewhere,
Sure.
Sometimes it's hard to know when the calling ends. And I think we weren't supposed to go back the second time, but that's really between my parents and the Lord, and that's not something that I hold against them in any way, but it was kind of the entire mission group made a mistake, I think, trying to go back that second time into a situation that seemed like it had calmed down, but there was a lot of stuff brewing under the surface still.
Right. You just talked about, you mentioned the Lord, and you list when you accepted Christ as your biggest turning point in your life. How old were you then?
I was 4 when I was in a Christian preschool program.
Okay.
So I knew that my parents believed in God, but it's that age where I remember starting to wake up into consciousness. Like I existed, and then I started having conscious thoughts like, oh, I told a lie, that was bad. I feel bad about that. So I became almost within, I don't know how long of a period of time it was, but some of my first memories were realizing I was a sinner and then realizing there was something that could be done about it.
Right. So a lot of people might be listening right now and they might hear that, okay, so you became a Christian at age 4. you were too young to really understand the gravity of such a decision and one of the magnitude that it is, a relationship, right, with Christ. So did you ever revisit that as an adult and say, okay, now I really grasp this now that I am much older, and kind of almost, I don't want to call it making the same decision again, but more having kind of I guess a different take on the gravity of things when you were older. Did that happen for you?
Yeah, I don't entirely know why, but I was always intensely aware that I had accepted at a very young age, and that wasn't, it's not that it wasn't going to be true for all time, but that I was going to grow past the decision and would need to probably keep making it into some, I never thought I could grow out of my salvation, but each time I felt like I had reached a new stage of life, I thought, am I still in this? Yes, I am. And so it's been pretty regular.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people come to those kind of conclusions at such a young age that maybe, I don't want to use this phrase, but maybe it doesn't stick as much as it would if they had come to that conclusion much later on. For example, speak about myself here. Born and raised, Southern Baptist. And I remember, quote, walking down the aisle when I was 7 years old. And the Keith at age 7 and the Keith much later on have a much different perception of God and Christ and religion itself than as a child.
Yeah.
And so as you grow and learn and study, then you're going to have different... So it's almost like I feel like as you are growing up and as you are becoming an adult, and even after you're a full-grown adult, you're going to have these different markers in your life where you kind of want to reassess things to see if, okay, do I still believe this? And maybe you change religions along the way. I certainly did. And so I can see how you would maybe have a different perception and a different relationship for that matter. I mean, that's definitely, I think, accurate for anybody. So are you of the same faith that you were at age 4 that you are now? Were you able to stick to, and I guess, believe that brand of Christianity this entire time?
At its simplest form, yes. In that my initial understanding was I was a sinner. I had a darkness inside me, and I had a darkness out. I remember just a lot of those early memories being pretty dark. Just my world was kind of dark, and I remember just a light coming in and saying, this is a person I can talk to even when I'm in my bed and I'm supposed to be going to sleep. I'm allowed to talk to him. And I remember
Jesus lets me stay up late.
He was with me all the time. And even though there were times where I had to face, he's bigger and different and maybe scarier, or not quite what I thought he was or wanted him to be. But we're still friends.
And I mean that sincerely. That is really great that because I don't run across that a lot in my life where someone has basically the same beliefs that they had as a child that they have as an adult. And I mean that in all sorts of manners, like whether it's they didn't believe when they were younger and now they do, or they did when they were younger, now they don't, or they believed then, they believe now, but they've just changed their own understanding along the way. So good for you on having a lifetime of basically the same faith, yeah?
Thank you.
Yeah, seriously. Okay, comfort food, homemade pizza. You gotta love any kind of pizza, whether it's homemade or comes from the store or whether it comes from a delivery. I'm just a pizza freak. So anyhow, but your mom makes a particularly good pizza recipe, is that right?
She has a good recipe for the crust in particular.
The crust.
And it was just a tradition every Friday. We got to the point where my mom had to admit that she didn't really like cooking, and I did, and I was interested in that, so I took it over at 16. I said, if I'm going to take the cooking, I got to take the shopping too, because I got to be in control of all of this.
Right.
And she was like, fine, here's some money, go shop.
Okay, good for you.
But I made her agree to make pizza with me every Friday night because I wanted to do it with her, and I didn't want to take that piece that was part of our family tradition. So when that kind of shift came when I was 16. We would sit and we would make the crust together.
Well, I don't want you to have to divulge a family secret here. However, that being said, is there a secret you can share with us on making the perfect crust?
It's just a lot of people use something that's already made or from frozen dough, and you just cannot beat homemade from scratch that day, very fresh.
Uh-huh. That's it?
That's the whole secret.
Wait, I don't even know that I learned anything there. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, let's see. You mentioned community theater, right? You're able to do that somewhat. But you also knit?
I do.
That's another like talent of yours there?
Yeah, my grandmother and my aunt together kind of tagged team to teach me in between the two Africa trips. So I was about 7.
Okay.
I think it was part of their way of recognizing that I had been through kind of a very big thing and not knowing even how to interact with it. And so let's sit down and learn how to knit.
Are you a patient person? Because it seems like that would take patience to really sit there and learn all that. Because I'm just trying to. Because I've seen relatives in my life. I can just see them in my head right now, knitting and crocheting and all that good stuff. And just like they've tried to teach me, and my brain just can't comprehend. You're a patient person, aren't you?
I'm patient with things, less so with people. I'm working on that. But
aren't we all?
Knitting is very you knot and you knot and you knot and you knot. You just keep going. You watch TV and it's relaxing.
You can what? Yeah. So your brain is focused on one thing, and like this is just kind of like, okay. Here's what I think it is like. I think it's like singing and playing a guitar at the same time, right? If you're watching TV and knitting, it's like one side of your brain's focused on this and one's.
It's the rhythm section.
See, but my brain can't do that. My brain has to just focus. Huh. That's very interesting. Okay, so you mentioned the knitting in between Africa trips. You said it was probably, or at least I don't want to put words in your mouth, kind of a mistake you felt going back the second time. What happened?
We went back when I was 9. I was over the moon to get back home, which is the way that I
get back
saw
home
it,
to
Africa.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because that was 2.5 years of my very formative.
And you had friends
time.
there, right?
Friends there, house there, stuff there. A lot of stuff was lost in those 2 years. Nationals took it, sold it. People who were upkeeping it wasn't stolen. It was just.
Well, these people aren't coming back. Yeah.
Exactly. Kind of a way that they were paid in some ways for the service of protecting the property. So a lot of things were gone, and a lot of people were new and different, but some of the friends were old, and it was still, I think, the best 3 months of my life. Just very, very tight-knit group of people recognizing how tenuous the thing we had was, because we'd all lost it before.
Right.
And I hadn't fit in well in school. Just little wild African kid just does not fit in well with a kindergarten class or a first grade class. So getting back with other wild missionary African kids was exactly what I wanted. And so for the first time, I felt like I had actual friends.
So were there, when you went to school in Africa, was it you sticking out among the locals, or was it a bunch of missionary kids such as yourself on like a campus type setting?
A bunch of missionary kids in a campus. Most of the properties around there, even the locals' properties, were concrete walled in, and then one-story buildings throughout that property. So if it was a Nationals compound, they would have their chickens running around in their compound. It was a way to kind of protect all of their extended family and their livestock and things like that. So our school was a compound, and all the kids were in the same mission group, but they could be from Germany or they could be from France.
I see.
And so, all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
But the language we spoke there was English.
Okay.
And we were all learning French because that was the language of the.
Right. And you said it was only 3 months you were back there?
3 months the second time. I remember we were having pizza because it was a
of course, with the perfect crust.
With the perfect crust that time of week, except we could only get Edam cheese for some reason, which is a European cheese, and Spam instead of pepperoni. So it was Edam cheese, Spam, pineapple, and that was the pizza. And And my sister and I had gone off to take our shower after dinner, and we heard this really loud banging noises. And I thought somebody must have slammed the bathroom door really, really. My dad must be really mad or something, because that was a really loud sound, and it happened again. And I kept looking around like, what? I can't put a meaning to this sound.
Right. What's causing that?
And my mom came in, and she looked scared, and she said they're just some bombs coming down. It's a little bit.
Look, I know you guys are getting ready for bed, but I just want to give you a heads up. There's some bombs nearby.
Exactly. My mom is a very calm person. She's very, very chill, and she had, it wasn't her first rodeo.
Mm-hmm.
So we all kind of got together in the living room with a couple other people from the mission. There are people coming in and out the door talking to us about, what's going on. As part of the nature of the thing, we all had go bags. So we all, at any given time, we knew that there was an emergency bag we could grab. And I remember the conversation was, do we grab them and run now, or do we wait? And what's the right answer here?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting there like, I've been through this before. I don't want to go through this again. Like, this is not, like, I just got home. And we decided not to head out right away. That night heated up quite a bit more. What was happening is we had heard this from a distance a couple days before. The Ivorian army under President Gbagbo had decided to bomb some of the rebellion army that was on that line that was still dividing the country.
Okay.
And they either accidentally or on purpose bombed a French outpost and killed 9 UN soldiers and 1 American aide, and the UN retaliated by bombing the planes in our town. So they were dropping bombs about a mile away on Ivorian aircraft. The problem in the situation was that the UN French soldiers were white and the Ivorians were all black. And the perception of the nationals was the white people are bombing us. The white people are the bad guys. It's a very normal, easy perception to have, especially when you have that visible of a difference. Mm-hmm. So that night, they were rioting outside our compound because they knew we were all white. And that night, anybody who even had a French name on their business got looted and destroyed that night across the country. Schools were burned down, bookstores were absolutely shredded, and there was shooting in the streets outside our house. So my parents put my sister and I on a mattress in between 2 concrete walls to make sure nothing could come in the window and hurt us. And I remember we barely slept that night, and my parents were packing our bigger bags because we decided we decided it was probably safer to hole up in the compound than try to run with a go bag, because it would have been even more dangerous outside. Right. So we stayed in that compound for about a week, just hiding, basically. Trying not to go out in the street, trying not to, we knew we had friends in the area, and we talked to our friends in the area, and they kind of helped calm down the people around us. So the initial rioting in our specific area went down. And at the end of that week, the Ivorian military came in with a bus into our compound. We got on the bus. They had their guns and got us on the bus to the airport. And a British Hercules came. No seats. We put our suitcases down and sat on the suitcases in the belly of the cargo plane. And they got us to Ghana, and we had refugee status in Ghana for 2 weeks before we were able to get flights out to the United States. And that was it. That was the end of it. My parents were like, we're not doing this. We're not doing this again.
I bet. My gosh. You avoided disaster not once, but twice in the Ivory Coast, huh? My gosh. So your experiences as a child over there, has that affected your, I guess, perception of wanting to do this kind of stuff as an adult?
One of the things that I came to feel later on was that there was a season in history where people from America needed to go to places that had never heard the gospel to share it, because one group of people had the gospel and the other didn't even have an inkling of it.
Okay.
So it made sense for the original rounds of missionaries to be going to China and to be going to Africa. But at a certain point, they have the gospel, and then it becomes this kind of savior complex of people from first world countries going to third world countries, and this kind of righteous, but there's a disconnect. You have almost this God race coming, these angels coming and telling you about the gospel, and that's at a certain point not healthy anymore. For those churches, they need to be led by nationals. And there's discipleship that can happen, and the translation still needs to happen of scripture. But I came to the point where I didn't agree anymore with the concept of me as an American going to Africa to do missions work.
So get this, Steve Dace, who does a program, an awesome program on the Blaze, my employer, he had a guest on once that not too long ago who made this point, because, like in the Bible, right, it says that everybody's got to hear the gospel before the end of the world, right? Okay. So, and this guy was making the case that the internet is now that conduit to the ends of the earth, right? It's very interesting. That was a very fascinating discussion. And he was talking about, because he runs a mission that focuses kind of on the technology aspect, the internet and all this stuff. And he was saying that I guess within a year or so from now, they should be able to have the, I forgot all the details here, but basically he was saying that, look, within the next year, we're going to be everywhere with the gospel. And so we will fulfill that. It was very interesting, because I've never thought, because whenever you think of that, you think of missionaries, right? You think of people physically going to places and spreading the word. This is more of an internet angle to it. I don't know. Look, obviously, I didn't write the Bible. Nobody knows when the end's coming. But I just thought that was a fascinating take on that.
Yeah.
So.
I think there's the verse that says every tribe, every tongue, every nation. So just because someone has heard the gospel, maybe in a language they know a little bit, it says every tribe and every tongue. So we might have a little bit further to go than he thinks.
I love it. Okay, so if you could go back in history, you would like to meet the Inklings. I told myself, don't even Google that. Make her tell you. What's the Inklings? What am I missing here?
It was a group of writers who were all friends. They, including most notably J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis. Yeah, wait a minute. Keep talking. Now it's coming back to me. Yeah, I just never knew the name of that. And it was like a group.
Yeah.
Yes.
Owen Barfield was another prominent member. There was a couple others who were kind of in and out of the group, and they kind of adopted Dorothy Sayers. The
That's awesome.
Agatha Christie type author.
Okay.
But they all had, minus Dorothy, had served in World War I. So they all had that combat experience, the horror of World War I that they shared together and wrote about in their own ways.
And what would you say to them?
I think I would just want to hear them talk
you just want
to each
hang
other.
Out and just be invisible?
Not necessarily not participate, but just kind of feel the conversation as they talk to each other and throw in my own comments here and there.
What is something on the Abby Libby bucket list that you would like to accomplish in your life? You list in the email that, you're ambitious, but you don't have big plans. Just take opportunities as they come. Because I'll tell you right now, as someone who's lived a little while longer than you have, it's impossible to predict where your life is going to go. It's impossible. You can try as hard as you can to set the path and set the course that you want. There are always going to be outside, external forces that are going to change your path in one direction or another. But that being said, what is something that you would like to accomplish as you look ahead?
Having started off so young at such a high level of life experience,
right,
I have just wanted to maintain that same speed, if you will. So I keep my passport updated so that every chance I get that I can afford to go somewhere and experience something I haven't before, I would like to see more of the world. I don't really care what things. I just want to get to the end and feel like I had as much life as I possibly could have had.
What's the next country you want to see?
I think Europe or Russia would be. I've only really been to Europe on layovers to Africa, so I think I'd like to experience something over there.
Life outside the airport you'd like to see?
Yeah. I've had a few experiences in South America more recently, and I'd like to get over to. It's a bad time to go over to Ukraine or Russia, but I'd like to see the Kremlin someday and things like that.
Okay, all right. Do you speak other languages once you get over there, or?
I have a little French.
Obviously, yeah.
And I can, because of the relationship between French and Spanish, I can understand quite a bit more. I can't speak it, and it melds with French in my mind, but I'm comfortable in a Spanish country.
Okay, very cool. All right, you're writing a book. That's exciting. You want to give a sneak peek what it's about, or when it might get published, or is this all TBD?
It started off because I felt like it's the fear of missing it, FOMO. My sister and my
that's a working title?
No.
Okay.
My writing started out because I was experiencing FOMO.
And FOMO is fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out. My sister was trying to write books, and my friend Danielle was trying to write books, and I was like, if they can do it, I can do it, and I don't want to be the one left out. So it would have been the summer after my freshman year of college. I was just starting to, clinically speaking, PTSD sets in several years after the fact, especially with kids. So I was just starting to experience severe PTSD from my experiences in Africa. Things were starting to crop up of how I was reacting to fireworks and how I was reacting to situations where I might have to leave a situation very quickly. I had a severe attack when my camp cabin flooded, and I had to pack a bunch of stuff really quickly, and it's just one of those, you just completely, your mind just blanks out, and you just sit there, and my body was like, we need to throw up, we need to,
wow,
this is not acceptable, we will not do this again. Just kind of your body revolting against the situation. And so I was trying to find some meaning or find some resolution to all of that. So I thought, let me write a book about the only type of PTSD I know anything about, which would be combat veterans. So I started to write about this young guy who'd fought overseas and come back, and trying to work through my own experiences with PTSD in a context that somebody else could understand. Because part of my struggle has always been, how do I make someone understand something that nobody has gone through? I don't know any missionary kids who have been in a war zone other than the ones that were there with me, and we don't really talk about it because we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
So I was trying to find a connection there. So the first draft of that story came together that summer, and then I took it into school the next year and did a internship with an author where she worked through it with me, and ended that year realizing that I had a long way to go as a writer, and the story wasn't anywhere close to where I wanted it to be. So almost every fall I revisit it.
Oh, cool.
And every fall I get done and I think, it's just not where I want it to be.
Well, one day.
One day I might rewrite it and think, this is finally done.
Right. Just wait till you have kids. You'll have no time whatsoever to work on anything.
I believe it.
So, okay, on social media, you are Abby Libby. Mm-hmm. But see, it's ABBY, and then the little underscore. Mm-hmm. Did you have to add that was there another Abby Libby out there?
There was.
What in the world?
Ridiculous. I think that person is a liberal too. So.
Oh no, I see. So that's your Twitter handle.
Yes.
Don't forget the underscore. And you're also you do some work over at freedomalliance.org. Mm-hmm. And that's your job, right?
That's my job.
So will people find you on that website, or?
I don't exist on that website. A lot of things that are there I wrote or designed or things like that. But
I got you. Very well. I appreciate you making time here. Have we covered pretty much everything? Or?
I think so.
Think so? All right. Abby Libby, thanks so much. Yes, that's her real name. Thanks for joining me here on At the Mic. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Keith.
It was such a pleasure getting to know more about Abby and her story. I had no idea that she'd spent time overseas in such harrowing situations. My goodness. I appreciate her taking the time to discuss her story with us here on At the Mic. Hey, if you get a chance to subscribe to this podcast over at youtube.com/atthemicwithkeith, I would be so grateful. The show is also available when you head to atthemicshow.com. 2 places you can get this show. And if you're able to rate the show 5 stars on Apple iTunes or Spotify, we'd so appreciate that as well. It helps more people find the show when they're looking for some good conversations like you found us right here. Now, on the next edition of At the Mic, I'm going to sit down with my friend Ian Patterson. You may not be familiar with his story, but you may be familiar with the system of underground contacts that Americans used to evacuate innocents from Afghanistan in the chaotic final days of the American occupation there. Well, Ian was an instrumental part in saving lives there in Afghanistan. We're going to discuss his own life story along with that here next week on At the Mic. And I know I say it a lot, but it can't be said enough. Please, go be free. And thank you for listening.
This has been At the Mic with Keith, an independent podcast production. Head to atthemicshow.com for archived episodes, sponsor information, and ways to connect.